I've been wanting to grow something different for a while now. I've settled on begonias. Now, before you turn off, if you're not familiar with species begonias, then you're really missing a trick. They're more challenging, in my opinion, they're more beautiful than the hybrids. There's lots of them, and I think lots more people would be interested in growing if only they knew how to do it. So today I'm going to go through my exact setup step by step, and I'll take you along with me on the journey to growing these incredible plants. Let's get started. And we are in. Okay, so why species begonias in particular? Well, if you're in the UK, you're probably familiar with the municipal planting schemes, multicoloured begonias, and that's it. You maybe have seen the large flowered, blousy, gaudy ones that people grow in shows, but they are a tiny portion of what is available out there. The species begonias, in my opinion again, are far more interesting and much more the kind of thing that I think people would want to grow if only they knew how. Species begonias are very endemic to specific places. Yeah, I know other plants are, but they can be really localized. They only grow under certain conditions, and if you remove one of those conditions, they may not grow at all. They're really highly adapted to particular situations and particular habitats. They are also very variable, so you might change one of those factors, one of those growth factors, and get what looks like a completely different plant, even though genetically it's the same. These kind of begonias do not grow in Europe. You only find species begonias in parts of Asia and parts of the Americas. So it's because of all these various inputs from the social media, because of how I found them really interesting plants and different to other kinds of plants that I've grown here in the greenhouse, and because that they are so challenging, this is why I've decided to give it a go myself and see if I can set up a grow space in order to grow them specifically from seed into beautiful thriving plants. I have grown species here before, of course, and I have made tentative steps into growing some of the more unusual ones, but unfortunately, because I didn't have my setup quite right, I lost quite a number of them earlier this year. The ones that survived you'll be able to see in a second when I show you my setup. So let's get on to the grow tent. So we're over here on the gable end of my greenhouse, the far end if you like. The doors are over there if you're familiar with the geography of the greenhouse, and we've cleared everything out here and we've put this grow tent in place. So this is where I'm going to raise these begonia species from seed. That's the plan. This is going to be part one, of course, and you'll be able to see how they grow and whether they actually work for me in the next part of this video. So let's start off with the grow tent itself. So this thing is plastic. It came all folded up, and it actually cost the princely sum of £8.99 from a shop called The Range, which if you are in the UK you will be familiar with. The only downside is, of course, if you want to fold it up again, you've got to follow some particularly difficult instructions, which so far have bested me, I have to say. So this one is going to say as it is, completely up and full of plants, hopefully. I did get another one, but I've very sensibly decided to keep that one folded flat for now, for the time being. So we know it's cheap. On the surface, what I've had to do is, because obviously there's slats on the bench, I've had to cover them with various items in order to prevent the humidity from sinking to the bottom. Now, what actually happens in a place like this, in a greenhouse, everywhere above plant level, it's higher humidity. Everywhere below plant level, it's lower humidity. So if I want to keep the humidity higher in there, if I allow ventilation from the bottom, then I'm going to lose humidity, and that actually was borne out in my tests. So we have this great big opening here, which will fold upwards like that, so I can get my entire head in there. So it's nice and big. Why did I choose a big grow tent and not, as you might have seen on various films on YouTube? I'll just bob down here if I can see if I can get hold of it, because some people choose to grow them like this under some kind of little cloche or little dome. I've seen people with, in fact, not just people, no less than Don Miller growing his over at the Fort Worth Botanical, I don't know what it's called, but they have the, probably, I think they said the third largest collection of species begonias in the world. And a lot of those were kept like this individually. They've got the space. I haven't, so I decided to go for this quite large grow tent. It's actually, dimension wise, 1 metre by 1 metre by 1 metre, so it's like 1 metre cubed, which gives me plenty of space in order to grow seeds, and then plenty of space in order to grow them on. Although I've been down that route before with a greenhouse, you think you've lots of space until you haven't. So anyway, that's why I went for the grow tent. So it's backed by, I mean, it's completely encircled, as it were, but that foil at the back isn't inside the grow tent, it's on the other side of the grow tent, but it does give a little bit of reflection, so that's quite useful. We do have the light. I've turned that one off for now because it looks like it flickers to you. I have got a grow light there, and then there's another one over there that doesn't really affect that. So how's that going to affect the plants in there? Well, begonias like diffused light through a canopy because they're used to growing in those kind of situations. There are some that are sun lovers, but not these particular ones that I'm going to grow. Most species aren't sun lovers. There may be one or two that are, but the majority of the ones that I want to grow are not. They like that diffused light. So they're going to get that. They're not going to get much from outside because of where I've got the foil insulation. We have got the 2 grow lights, and it will be diffused through this. It's not completely transparent. I would call that semi-transparent, a little bit translucent. It does actually filter some of it out. So I think that might be good enough for me in this case. So that's the light sorted. The next thing is humidity. Now, I've been on record before saying that humidity isn't that big a deal for most plants, and I still think it isn't in the UK. I live in the northwest of the UK, which is generally high humidity anyway. It doesn't really go much below about 70% humidity for most of the time. However, I have here a Begonia arachnoidea, which is a species. Here it is. And this particular plant, I've had it a couple of years now, and I found that it grew best during the winter months when the temperature was about 12 degrees in here. I've kept it at that. That's my minimum before I heat it. And then it grew worse during the summer months. Now, why was that? Well, the only difference, bearing in mind that they like high temperatures, so it wasn't the temperature, the only difference was the humidity. Most begonias really do like high humidity, and what they don't want is fluctuations. And during the summer here in the UK, if we have a good summer, which we did this year, this is why this plant is now suffering. If we did have a good summer, then the humidity will drop during the day once the sun's out. And we had a particularly dry and warm, or hot in fact, summer this year. Keep wanting to close that because I don't want to lose the humidity, although it is, the ambient humidity in the greenhouse at the moment is around 75% plus, so it's okay, it's good enough for them. So bearing in mind that I need it to be high humidity, I have blocked off with these trays and some tile at the back so that the slats are all covered. There's just a little bit of ventilation down there, which isn't a bad thing. It may well prevent it from steaming up once I get lots of plants in there. At the back there, I have put my own little creation here. It is a piece of capillary matting. It covers the back and part of that shelf, and at the bottom I've cut it out so that it sits in a reservoir of water. So the water will wick up the capillary matting, and humidity is all about, in this case, the surface area. I tried just doing it with 2 or 3 trays, didn't really make any difference. It was only as soon as I'd done this setup that it really increased the humidity. So we've got the light from the grow lights, we have the space, we now have the humidity, we have a way of monitoring the humidity, so that there, this is a Govee temperature and humidity monitor. I've got 3 of those in the greenhouse. There's one over there and there's one there as well. So I know exactly what's going on in here. I can see it from an app on my phone. Okay, so here it is. So you can see the grow tent at the top. Now bear in mind that I've got it open at the moment. So the temperature is 18.3 because it is quite warm outside. 79.9, and that's with the door of the grow tent open. And you can see in the rest of the greenhouse we've got 76 and 73, or it's 80 now. So it is working. Obviously when I get more plants in there, that will also improve the humidity, just the plants. That's the only reason I've put the Begonia longiciliata in there, is to give it a little bit more natural humidity. So the only thing remaining is the temperature. Now, because I keep the temperature in the greenhouse to a minimum of 12 degrees, I needed to increase it. I believe on average, if I can keep the temperature inside this grow tent to 15 degrees Celsius or above, then that's not going to make the begonias suffer too much. They will still continue to grow slowly through the winter. They really prefer higher temperatures than that, but obviously then there's a cost. So how have I increased the temperature? Well, we've got this little heater here. These are designed to run for a long time. They only give a very small output, but I have attached it to an Inkbird monitor down there, and I've set that at 15 degrees Celsius. So that will switch that on when the temperature drops below, and it will keep it in there to 15 while the rest of the greenhouse drops down to 12 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that is my setup. Over here we have all the things necessary. There's a few things for orchids as well, but all the things necessary for seed sowing. So I have approached Tom Cranham, who is well known in the American Begonia Society for his recent talk, and well known on Instagram for all his fantastic, I don't know what you call them, they're almost like landscapes of begonias that are incredibly artistic and skillful things to do. I'm not aiming to replicate that, I'm just interested in growing the plants. So I believe I need worm casts, that's that. I'm also going to need akadama, that's that. And I have some volcanic lava rock coming as well. So that's going to be the recipe for the seed sowing, and I'll show you that when that comes, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it. It's following his instructions to the letter, because these seeds are expensive and I don't want to mess it up. So that's my setup. The next video will show you exactly how I go about doing it, and you can do it too if you're interested. But just to pique your interest a little bit further, let's have a look at some of the species that I've already been growing for a while. This is Drassapelta, Begonia Drassapelta. Now if you saw my melanobulata, which unfortunately melted over the summer, it's a little bit like that. It's a bumpy one. A new one over here is Begonia metallica, for obvious reasons. It has like a metallic effect. A lot of these species begonias have an iridescence to them. If you can get the right lights on them, it's something that really fascinates people. We have, this is actually a hybrid. This is Truncatifolia crossed with rubiti. Now this hasn't done much, even though it's over a year old, I think mostly because of those fluctuations in the humidity over summer. Oh, someone's grown a flower. So this is Begonia CF retinervia. Look at the leaves on that. See what I mean about them being more interesting than hybrids? Oh, the hybrids are great, I know they are. There's some little blooms about to come on that, so that one looks nice. And again, look at the difference in the leaves. That leaf to that leaf, you wouldn't think it was the same plant. It's a different shape, same texture, but completely different markings on the same plant. That one has like white markings on it, that one has the dark markings. I think that's fascinating. And of course my arachnoidea over here, which isn't looking particularly great at the moment. I'm hoping that now that that's got a consistent humidity, it will begin to start to grow properly, and then I'll be able to divide the rhizome. The rhizome looks pretty healthy. It's just these leaves were beginning to melt. So that's my grow tent set up, and a little sneak peek at some of the begonias that I'm already growing in there. I hope you're inspired by that and excited to have a go yourself, because that's what the part 2 video will be all about when those plants arrive from Tom, who I believe is on his holidays at the moment. So when he comes back, he will be whisking some seed off to me in order for me to make my first baby steps into growing proper species begonias. If you already grow them, then please tell me your setup on what works and what doesn't work for you. If you're inspired to give it a go yourself, I'll be interested to hear about that too. Any questions, pop them in the comments. That's it for now. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.